Hello there and welcome. This video was supposed to be a video about me winding up the boost in my Volvo 240 LS project and sending the rods to the moon. But it hasn't turned out that way at all. Instead, due to a minor inconvenience, I've completely overreacted, and this video details the process. Hope you enjoy. I've been changing over these head studs, taking the Chinese ones out and putting the ARP 2000 ones in. I've been doing it in place just one by one. Hadn't bothered to film anything because it's pretty monotonous and boring. When I got to the end one down here, you can sort of see the one right in the middle of the head there at the back, the nut was loose. It was finger tight. I'm like, oh, that's not good. Maybe I just never torqued it because the brake booster was in the way previously. Don't know what's going on there. But then I pulled the stud out. I got this. Yep, that's not good. That's the thread from the block pulled right out with the stud. So, options now. Helicoil, oversized stud on the back, or I'll pull this out and put my big engine in. Might be LSX time. We'll see. Heads off. Looks pretty bloody good in here. There's a small shadow here. This is the stud that's damaged, so there'd be less clamping here. Sort of looks like, I don't know, maybe it's been fretting, but it didn't. I don't think it's lifted at all. But have a look at this engine. This is the engine I built 8 years ago, and built is a loose term. I replaced several pistons and rods with other standard ones because I got this engine with bent rods and damaged pistons. I just dingleberry honed that in the dark and I forgot to lubricate it. So that was just done with a dry tool. Still looks fine to me. After I put this engine together, I put it outside and left it outside for 3 years uncovered. And then fired it up without inspecting it. Several years later, I suppose 3 years later, I fired it up without inspecting. Off brake cleaner. Looks pretty good to me. So I need to investigate what's required to repair that thread. Can't really see, it's pretty deep down in there. Don't know whether it's going to be worth it or not, but it will serve as a decent spare engine. Alright, let's get it off the frame. I never make these things easy for myself, but I've pulled the heads off this engine. This is the one that came out of the car. It's just a 6 litre standard rod and piston deal. The bores all look good. I didn't expect there to be any problems. Both heads are off. But yeah, because the head bolt is stripped, or the thread stripped in the block from this one, it's not really economical for me to repair. I mean, it can be done, but it's several $100s to do so, and I've kind of been looking for an excuse to pop my other engine in, just hiding over there in the corner. That's a 6.4 litre LSX with forged pistons and rods, and obviously an aftermarket crank. But to get that one in, I need to dig out an engine stand from over there. It's been sitting for a long time, so I'm going to pull the heads off that one as well, just give it an inspection. I'm going to put the better studs that I got for this block in that one, because that's only got the entry-level ARP studs, whereas the ones I bought were the ARP 2000s, so they're better. And yes, when I have a look at it, I'll need to swap the sump because that's got a early Commodore style sump on it, whereas this one's got the modified truck sump to suit the Volvo. So I'll swap that over as well, but making things hard for myself. I've got no room because my rubbish pile is growing, but I should be able to find enough room to pull that stand out and load the engine up, and once that's done, I can pull this off the cradle, start swapping some things around there. I've also made a decision that I'm going to put this transmission back in for now. I do have a better one. I've had that better one for a while, but I want to use this one because I know it works and I don't want any variables in this changeover. I just want to put in stuff that I know is good, and if I need to change it, I will when I get up to that problem. Just pulled the rockers off this engine. This is the LSX. I've just pulled out from the corner of the shed. It's been sitting in the corner of the shed for about 8 years now. Very lightly used. You can probably tell by the colour of this oil. I haven't added that. That's how it's been sitting for many years. So I suppose the truth will tell once I pull these heads off what the state of the bores is like. Heads are off. Have a look. Absolutely no rust in these bores. They look pretty glazed. There's no rust. I haven't rotated the engine at all yet. There's a little bit of rusty water that's sprayed around because the block's rusty, so I left it sitting with water in it, but that doesn't matter, that'll clean up okay. Yeah, the important part's all good, so I'll pull the water pump off, which will be clogged full of rust and shit, and this off, and yeah, we can give it a flip. Yeah, full of rust as I expected. That's okay. Can even see the high tide line. Yep, that's where it's been floating to. Yeah, crusty. Moving right along, I've flipped the engine upside down and I've pulled the pan and the windage tray off. And this is how it looks inside here. Pretty much brand new at this point. So because this is an LSX block, it has steel caps, not the cracked iron ones, and ARP hardware as well. I'm running a single row timing chain. From memory it was a Coils timing chain. Can't remember exactly the brands, but yeah, you can see Callie's rods, ARP hardware, Callie's crank, and CP pistons are in this rotating assembly. So 390 cubic inch setup. 24 tooth reluctor swapped onto that crank. I think it was a 58 when I got it, but it's a 24 now. And what I want to do is I'm just going to, whatever the most convenient cap is, probably this one, I want to pull that rod big end off, just have a look at the bearing, and I might pull a cap, I don't know, which maybe the thrust one, I don't know, just to give it a look at. It was manual last time I used this engine, had a T56 behind it, so maybe I'll pull the center one, because that's the one that has the thrust bearing. So I might pull that one just to have a look, see. Alright, it's dirtier than I thought, so I've just pulled the rotating assembly out, well, partially. Got all the rods and pistons out. No damage, but I might put a new set of bearings in there anyway, just because they've been sitting. But I haven't got the right size socket to get that undone. So, back to the shop. So I've got this Edelbrock 2-piece timing cover, which lets you take the top half off with the intention of being able to change the cam without pulling the balancer off. So you pull the timing gear out, that guy there, which is a bit of a saga. You've got to kind of snake it out from behind the chain, focus, yep, good. So the chain's in there, but the problem is, on the LSX block it's got a different cam retaining plate, and there's no way that I could get to those bolts, because they're kind of, if I get it lined up, they're below the 2-piece cover, and they're tight. I would break those bolts or the tool, or round them off trying to get those out, so that doesn't work on an LSX. I don't know why I put it on. A little more progress. I've taken all the main caps off here just to inspect. Everything's looking okay. I think I'll replace the bearings anyway. There is some light scratching in there that I can catch a nail on, so I may as well, while I'm in here, I'll get a new set of rod bearings and a new set of main bearings. But I need to stop there. I've left the middle cap on just because I haven't pulled the balancer off yet. I haven't got a tool for that, so I need to get a tool. Pulled all the plugs out of the water jacket and the oil jacket. They're all over here. And I've got the rear cover off. The rear cover on an LSX is custom. It suits only this block, so I will need to buy some new seals because they're O-ring and they're not good. So we'll get a couple of those seals. I might as well change the rear main as well. The front is standard. Well, it's an aftermarket cover, but it suits any LS engine, so nothing too fancy there, but that's where I'm going to stop today. I'm trying to get this harmonic balancer off. I bought one of these 3-bolt tools to pull it off, because it's a 3-bolt style balancer, and I just can't get it off. So it's bent the tool, which you can't really tell, but there's a big bend in it now, and all the bolts are splayed out because it bent the tool. I put a few extra washers in there because the first attempt it just buckled the washers, so I don't know what I'm going to do now, but the next thing I'm going to try is heating the bejesus out of this balancer, which will probably kill the vulcanized rubber, but I don't intend on reusing it anyway, so yep, got to do what I got to do. Got the balancer off, wasn't without a battle though. Destroyed that balance puller, that's stuffed. Then I tried to pull out the big guns. The 5-ton one did the job, the 15-ton doesn't really have enough stroke, so yeah, 5-ton one got it off. So blocks now, it's stripped apart from the cam bearings. I think there's a couple of plugs at the back I couldn't get to as well. Yeah, it's a couple of plugs at the back I need to pull out still. But it's ready for cleaning. Cranks over here, camshaft, all looking fine. Bearings aren't great, so those will all be changed. The thrust is okay, but they're not new, and if I'm going to go to this effort, I want them to be new, so new bearings on the way. Just hit this with rust killer, then took it outside and pressure washed it. It looks pretty good now. If you look right in, you'll probably be able to see there's a little bit of rust in there. This is probably the worst spot. Nothing that's going to impede flow, I don't think. It just might eventually break off and go through the cooling system, but I'll just be diligent with my fluid. I suppose my water changes. Apart from that, should be fine. Alright, ready to reassemble. So the cool thing about this block compared to a normal LS block is it's priority main. So the oil goes to the main bearings first. So if I can demonstrate that with all my focus, it doesn't work. This is where the oil pump sends its oil. So the pump sits here, sucks out of the sump. It's obviously the engine's upside down, so it sucks out of the sump, does its whizzy thing, sends it down this gallery. That gallery goes to here, and then you can see down the side of the block there's this sort of, it's a pipe cast into the block. Gets down to the end. We've got this little doodad. It's actually blocked with a plug in between, so it sends it up to here, which goes to the oil filter, and it goes back down here, which comes through this part here and turns here. If you look down that hole, again, what we can't see, you'll see part of that plug, but it goes down in the block. It goes down that tube there, which you can't see very well, but where that tube goes is to just underneath the cylinder liners on this side. So I can actually feel it here, and it runs along the whole way along that side. And if you look into the mains, you'll see two holes. One which heads on that angle, get my finger in here, gets on that angle towards where that oil tube is, and another which then receives the oil and then sends it back down towards the cam. That's opposite a typical LS1. Normal LS1s will get cam oil first, and then whatever's left gets to the mains, but this is opposite. So once those two things are oiled, the oil comes to the front, comes out this hole here, and then turns and goes down these. This is the feed for the lifters. So it goes mains, cam, then lifters, as far as oil feed, which is better for performance and reliability. Block is now all cleaned. I've resurfaced the top, and I've done a quick hone of the bores. Managed to get all of that rust out, so that's good. And I've put all the coolant jacket plugs back in, all on the sides, so it's now ready to go back together, but as usual, still waiting from parts. I don't have my main bearings yet, so I can't really go any further, so to be continued. The new bearings came in the mail, so I've gone ahead, popped them in, crank in, cleaned it all up, torqued the spec, and next I need to put the rods and pistons back in. I've just been cleaning some of the carbon off these. They're not spotless, they're not new, they're not going to be, but yeah, it's a bit of carbon like that one I haven't done yet. I just want to clean that up just so I've got a nice clean start. Yeah, I'll finish cleaning them up and they can go back in. Pistons all back in their holes. Even though I numbered them, I didn't get them right the first go. But they're right now. Just wanted them back where they came out from, because I'm reusing the rings, so. Yep, that's all good. Now back to waiting for more parts. I've just wound all the new ARP 2000 studs into this block, so they all fit the same as the other block, which is convenient. I knew they would, but it is convenient because there are two different lengths of head stud. Alright, new day, more progress. I want to put the heads on, but before I put the heads on I need to put the cam in. I've been holding off on putting the cam in because I don't have the O-rings for the front and rear retaining plate, but I can't do the heads until I have the cam in because I need to put the lifters in and they can only be done with the heads off. So I'm going to put the cam in and the lifters should hold it in place. So I've just tidied the cam up, a little bit of assembly lube on that, and I will feed it in and then move on to the next bit. Camshaft is in, you can see it flush with the back there. And a little trick is to use a couple of water pump bolts because they're the same thread. Makes a nice little handle to hold on to while you're doing this job. As you can see what I mean, there's no front plate or rear plate because the O-rings are not here and the plates are down here waiting. So there's nothing to stop that cam effectively falling out the back, but I've used plenty of assembly lube and it's really tacky, so that should stay in place. Lifters are back in their holes. I'll just lube them up and chuck them in. That'll be right. Yep. Just got to wipe down this deck surface again, head gasket, and then ready for the head. Another new day. I was ready to put these heads on, but I just quickly took them to the machine shop just to have the faces just skimmed a little bit. Yeah, it was too much work cleaning them up with a razor, so they look pretty good. I'm just going to give them a clean because they're covered in CRC, and then they can go on. Yep, that's one head on, cleaned, torqued, ready to go. And no, I'm not reusing the spark plugs, they're just in there to keep things out of the threads for now. So that will be changed, but alright, flip it over, do the other side. Alright, and that's the other head. Bolted down, torqued, ready for push rods and rockers. I'm using these stepped push rods. They're different lengths, I can't remember why, but I'll measure again either way. I've got 7350 on the intakes and 7350 on the exhaust, so I'm sure there was a reason when I last assembled this, that's what they measured as, but I'll check it again just to be sure. Before I put the rockers on, I need to time the cam. Before I time the cam, I need to put that front plate on. Luckily the O-rings have arrived for my seal kit, so I can do that now. Timing gear on, torqued, time dot to dot, can't really tell but it is. Number one's at top dead center. I've just gone along and I've torqued all of these rockers. I also used the bolt thread to determine the preload. We're sitting at about 50 thou on the, I think that's the exhaust, and 40 thou on the intake. Other way around. Yeah, intake, exhaust, but they're within spec for those lifters, so we're good there. Right, next up, oil pump. I actually bought a brand new oil pump. I've never used a brand new oil pump before. I've always just reused the crap that I've had, and I've never had an issue, but I thought, why not? I'll put this smelling one on and see how it goes. I had to do that job twice because I forgot to put the cam chain guide in, so I had to take the pump off to put that on and repeat. But that's done. I followed the melting process of just snugging it on finger tight, turning the engine over twice, and then tighten up the bolts. It just helps to center the pump. There's better ways I've seen to do it where you pull the front plate off and you shim the actual gears inside. I can't be bothered. This will do. It's on the Mellings website. It's good enough for me. Timing cover, harmonic balancer, alternator, water pump, all bolted on and torqued down. I've just flipped it upside down now because I'm going to put the windage tray on here, and I've got to do the oil pickup next. Then the sump can go on. Alright, first thing that requires modification. This windish tray is from that engine because that sump is from that engine and the windish tray is linked to the sump. It hasn't been machined for the oversized ARP mains yet, so I need to drill these holes out a little bit bigger. Some of them are the right size, but some of them are too small. And I also may have problems where it hits the rod ends or the counterweights because this is a stroker crank. So first I'll drill it out and then we'll see if it contacts anything. Okay, drill out the holes. So it slots down all the way, but it is hitting here. You can tell because this side's down. If I push here, it rocks, and if I push here, it rocks. So it's pivoting right in the middle. So I think it's hitting the stud that's in there. If I get this up with one hand. Yep. That stud there, the inner one. So I'm just going to take a piece out of there, and then we should be sweet. Done. Quick slice with the grinder. Bolt head pokes through. I've just filed it a little bit, but realistically everything in here is sharp anyway, so it doesn't matter. Cleaned it back up, put it back on, and it's good. So I'll put all the nuts on now, and I'll just give the crank a turn just to make sure that nothing hits it. And if it's got clearance, it's got clearance. Alright, bolted that down, rotated the engine a couple of times, no noises, no tight spots, so that's good. I just got to take one of these bolts comes out, or one of these nuts, because the pickup tube will go around here somewhere and bolt on there. So I'll just have to work out which one that is and put the pickup on with the correct O-ring. Pickup tube in. I got one of those little brackets that lets you use the other bolt hole. The bolts that came with were wrong, but it's alright, I found a random one that fits in there. Yeah, that's that. All those windish tray bolts are now torqued up as well. So rear cover I suppose next, and then the sump, or sump first, we'll see. So the LSX rear cover uses a standard rear main, so I've just replaced that seal, but it also uses these special O-rings which are unique just to this LSX cover. Previously I had a hell of a time getting these to stay in their grooves, but I learnt a trick from Rob Darm. You just spray a little bit of Hylamar in there, and to get it in the groove I just spray it on a piece of plastic and scrape it off with a toothpick, put it in the groove, and the O-ring sticks. There, that stuff works a treat. Right, done. Still need a couple more bolts and bits and pieces, but all the major items are on. Air conditioning, alternator. Throttle body's only got one bolt holding it because it needs really long M6 bolts and I don't have any of those, so I'll need to buy some. But yeah, looking alright. Ready to bolt back onto the transmission and put in the car. Got some bolts for the throttle body, so that's looking good. Now I need to start to move some things around and make some room out here. I've got to put that on the engine cradle, so that's out of the way. And I need to bolt this transmission to this, so I can put it back on that cradle over there. So, a bit to do, lots of shuffling. Old engine's out of the way. New engine up on the crane, off the stand. So I need to put the flex plate on the back and bolt the transmission up. Just need to nip up those bolts first because I don't think I've torqued those yet. Yeah, I've got the engine mated to the transmission, which all went pretty well. I've just covered this up because I've been doing a bit of grinding on the engine mounts. These engine mounts previously had a little lump on the back, but it fouls on the coolant jacket plug, so I've had to grind a little divot on the back of the mount on this, and I'm working on the same on the other one over here, but it's a bit late to be making that much noise, so I'm just going to call it for tonight and get back in the morning. But yeah, it's all going well. The LSX actually has got an extra bolt. This bolt on the 4080 that's normally not used actually goes somewhere on the LSX block, so yeah, I might get another bolt. Doesn't really matter too much, I suppose, but if there's a bolt hole there, I like to use it, so yeah. Ready to get this up on the engine cradle now. I finished modifying these mounts. just took that section out of the back there as well, just because, and it's hard to sort of demonstrate, but when the engine sort of twists like that under torque, and that part of the mount was touching, it was compressing the bushing just enough to rub. So now it can't. It can go in now. Job done. Back on the engine cradle. Everything looking pretty good. Just got to bolt the steering rack to the cross member, and then this whole assembly can go back in the car. That's where I'm going to wrap it up for this video. Next step for the engine is to obviously put it in the car, but before I do that, there's a bunch of other little things that I need to do. You've seen me talk about the air conditioning. Yes, I'm putting air conditioning back in the car. It's a bigger job than it sounds because I currently don't have any heating in the car either, so all of that needs to be done. Adding the air conditioning in is not without its challenges as well. Obviously, I have to add in a heater cooling unit inside the cabin, which I don't have currently, but I also need to modify the exhaust manifold that goes on this side of the engine. Previously, it would loop right around here and basically pass for the crossover directly where the compressor is. My mate Andy has been busily working away in CAD and has designed a different manifold design that will fit in and wrap around underneath between the air compressor, or the AC compressor, and the steering rack. My requirement with manifold is that it also needs to fit in within the rails of the vehicle. So if I ever try and drop the engine out at the bottom, I don't have to take this manifold off. So that will meet the requirement for this side. I want to redo the passenger side as well, but not just yet because it's working fine at the moment. I wanted to get it to a stage where I can drive it. But this one I have to do for the air conditioning, so I've ordered some parts to redo that manifold, and that will be detailed in a future video as well. You also might have picked up on the electronic throttle body. Yes, I'm putting electronic throttle in the car. Previously it has been cable throttle, and although the factory computer that I've been running can run an electronic throttle body, I don't think it can run that one, and it can't run it particularly well. In order to run the electronic throttle body properly, among several other things that I'd like to improve, I've spent some money and I've ordered myself some Haltech gear. So I've got a Haltech Nexus R5 and an IC7 dash that I'm going to put in the car, which is quite a big expense, but obviously now with a much better engine, I want to try and protect it the best I can. The computer that I have been running, as good as it has been, like it's got me to a 966, which is pretty impressive, I think, doesn't have any type of protections in it at all. So I wasn't too worried about breaking the stock engine because it is a stock engine and who cares really. This one I got a bit of money into. I don't really want to break it with something stupid, so investing the money in the Haltech is cheaper than building another engine, so that's on its way. Some of the other functionality that I'd like to achieve with the Haltech is cruise control, traction control, some kind of better anti-lag, something to give me a bit of an advantage with roll racing, just general cool stuff that the Haltech can do that I want to experiment with, but primarily the traction control and the cruise control will be pretty cool to have. So the throttle body certainly helps with both of those, but in order to really take advantage of this technology, I need to have some kind of wheel speed sensor. So I will be experimenting with some different types of front hubs, maybe modifying the hubs I've got to add wheel speed sensors onto those. I'd also previously had a bit of an issue with my brakes at Wilby. The brakes do work quite well, but the vacuum assist doesn't come on very predictably. And in low manifold or high manifold vacuum situations, the brakes bite a lot earlier than I would expect them to. And that resulted in me locking up the brakes at Wilby and nearly spearing off into the crowd. So I don't want to do that again. I don't particularly want to run a brake booster, a brake power booster. I don't particularly want to redo the whole brake system again. I am going to try something a little bit different, and that is an electronic brake booster, which is similar to what you get in hybrid vehicles like your Teslas or any type of electric hybrid like Honda CRVs or newer other electric hybrid vehicles. So while playing with the electric brakes, I'm also going to look at redoing some of the brake lines that are currently running across the firewall. They work, but they're not particularly neat. On the Volvo 240, the brake distribution block is on the Australian passenger side. Would have been obviously the driver's side in America, but in Australia it's on the passenger side, so there's a lot of lines that go backwards and forwards for relatively no reason. I'm going to relocate that distribution block to direct down to the booster and make some lines to suit it just to make it neater. It's jobs like that that are heaps easier to do before the engine goes in, so although it's ready to go in, I'm going to tackle those jobs first and then put this in. So yeah, lots of work coming, lots of future video ideas. I'm going to try and break them up into major components like the air conditioning, the brakes, the Haltech install, each with their own video with some detail in it. That will depend how I go with actually getting parts when I need them. There may be quite a delay between videos. It is what it is. I still work a day job. So my plans for this video were to just install the new head studs in my 6-litre engine, ramp the boost up to about 25 pounds and throw a rod somewhere. Obviously that didn't happen with the thread pulled out of the block, but hopefully this has been interesting and it sort of sets the stage for the future videos to come. So hopefully you've enjoyed. Thanks very much.